Bitch, I'm him. ITBOYBBNO $sign. That's me. That's right. That's me. That's right. I am HIM. The Gen Z Eminem. That's me. That's right. That's me. That's right. That's me. Damn right. Baby, when it, boy, Jesus Christ, I bet on myself, I up my price. I kiss on the tongue, I ain't got no type. 200K, got me jumping on stage. All white bands, see me whipping mayonnaise. She looking at me, she wanna tight. Shawty got a boyfriend, get out my face. Hey, bitch, born on smoke it like endo. Free throw, never catch me in a friend zone. Catch real green cheese pesto. Eating her box like bento, memento. Tech keep bustin' like Pepsi Mentos. Fit all money, yeah, this ain't Kenzo. Hey, I'm the it boy, dick long, money long, yes, I'm him, you spot on. ITBOYBBNO $sign. That's me, that's right, that's me, that's right. I am HIM, the Gen Z Eminem. That's me, that's right, that's me, that's right.
IT boy, the it boy, you know he the shit boy. IT boy, the it boy.
Bitch, I'm him.
Welcome, Exiles! In this video, I will showcase two versions of this build. One on a medium budget, around 70 to 80 divines, and one with mage blood. I will also briefly talk about a cheap 15 div budget version to get you started and going, but I don't think there's any reason to do a full showcase of it, since it uses the exact same gear as the medium budget version, and the main difference is in the jewels, and a few changes to the tree. Other than that, it functions the exact same way, and you can slowly but surely get each jewel upgrade over time. And for the Mage Blood version, it's still not fully min-maxed, of course. There's plenty more upgrades to get, like Forbidden Flame and Flesh with Vow Bastion, Light of Meaning with ES, some Awakened Gems like Greater Multiple Projectiles and Spell Echo, Original Sin Ring on the Mercenary, and so on. But all of those are obviously extremely expensive high-end game chase items. Also, don't worry if you don't have a Mage Blood. The medium budget version is still incredibly tanky thanks to Tides of Time Belt, which is kind of like a mini Mage Blood. So you will still be able to clear pretty much all content with it. And for dessert, I'll be showing my mercenary and explaining why I chose this gear on this particular mercenary. By the way, all of these versions of Forbidden Rite must use Chaos Inoculation and Whispers of Infinity Amulet. Without them, the builds do not function at all. I will also be putting POBs in the description of each version of the build if you guys just want to grab the build and skip the yapping part. With that being said, I'll quickly go over the cheap budget version first, and then I'll move on to the medium budget, and lastly, I'll go over the Mage Blood version. So, the gear, tree, and idea for it are simple. We're an Elementalist, so we want to stack as much Golem buff effects from Primordial Eminence Jewels and Primordial Bond cluster passives as possible. The Golems won't really be doing a lot of damage themselves, but they will be providing us with a boatload of damage. We don't have to worry about their tankiness too much until we start doing juice content, because Elementalist's Liege of the Primordial Ascendancy passive will automatically revive them every 4 seconds if they were to ever die. Because of all the Primordial Eminence jewels, we can also grab an Anima Stone jewel to increase the maximum amount of golems we can have summoned at a time by 1. We're going to be using an Aegis Aurora shield because it'll recover ES equal to 2% of our armor when we block. So, we'll need to cap out our block and get as much armor as we can, and in order to do that, we'll be using Glancing Blows Keystone as an early and cheap way to efficiently cap out our block chance. And we'll be using Armor and ES Gloves, Boots, and Helmet with Determination Aura to get a lot of armor. Because of all that armor, we can also afford to grab the Divine Shield Keystone for some more ES recovery from damage that we mitigate. And also, the reason we're using Armor, ES Gloves, Boots, and Helmet is because that'll allow us to take the Armor and ES Mastery, which increases the ES our body armor provides by 100%. And then we can grab a Twilight Regalia with a large amount of energy shield, and that'll basically double it. We'll be using the new Coiling Whisper Ring as well, because that'll provide us with Soul Eater stacks, which will give us an insane amount of attack and cast speed when we curse enemies. In order to maintain the stacks at a maximum though, we'll be using a Time Clasp Ring with skill effect duration reduction on it. We need need the curse we applied to expire as fast as possible in order to generate Soul Eater stacks. We'll be using the new Mystic Refractor wand to get 3 extra projectiles and a bit of cast speed. For the belt, we'll be using a Pyrus Shock clasp. We're igniting, chilling, and shocking enemies on hit thanks to Elementalist's Ascendancy passives, so this is super good to have early on. The flasks are personal preference, but I would advise that you get the prefix mod, gain 3 charges when you are hit by an enemy on all of them. This will ensure that they're up pretty much all the time while you're mapping. For the Pantheon, we'll be going with the Brine King for stun and freeze immunity, and Abarath for burning ground immunity. And for the bandits, we're going with Aramir for the extra passive point. Here's the tree real quick. It's very generic, and it's mainly focusing on grabbing jewel slots while taking a bit of extra damage, ES, and mana reservation efficiency along the way in order to fit all of our auras. For our gems, we have Frostblink of Wintry Blast as our travel skill, linked with Spell Echo and Void Manipulation on our wand. Spell Echo will give us all the cast speed we need to go super fast, and Void Manipulation will make it unable to do elemental damage, so we won't have to fear any damage reflect map mods. We'll be using Stone Golem, Chaos Golem, and Flame Golem linked with Enhance on the gloves. Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice with Void Manipulation, Cruelty, Unbound Ailments, Deadly Ailments, and Spell Echo on our body armor. Tempest Shield, Discipline, Determination, and Carry On Golem of Hordes on our helmet. No matter what our maximum number of golems is, we should always be using at least 2 extra Horde Golems because that'll provide us with 20% increased damage for every Primordial Bond passive that we have. We'll be automatically generating Soul Eater stacks through Bladefall of Tardis, linked to Temp Chains, Hex Touch, and less duration on our boots. When we enter a map, just press Bladefall once, and we don't have to ever click it again for the rest of the map. And last but not least, Herald of Agony, Lightning Golem, and Golem of Safeguarding on our shield. If you don't have an Anima Stone Jewel yet, you can remove the Safeguarding Golem until then. Also, if you feel like you need more damage instead of tankiness, you can swap it out for a Maelstrom Golem instead. Now, let's move on to the medium budget version. As I mentioned earlier, majority of the tree, gear, and gems is the same as the cheap budget version. We're still armor stacking, and we're still stacking golem buff effects, but we're replacing in a few very important items that will significantly increase our damage, and we're removing the Glancing Blows keystone since it's always better to not take a hit than to take a hit, which will boost our tankiness by a ton. The first key item is the Tides of Time belt with +3 utility flask charges every 3 seconds. This belt will ensure that all of our flasks are up permanently, not just during maps, but also during bosses. Flask choices are still up to you, but I prefer having these right here with this version of the build. We're also using an Oriet's and Bismuth flask to help fix resistances and for the occasional spicy monster kabooms. The second important change is that we're adding in a Watcher's Eye with the mod gain 20 to 30 energy shield per enemy hit while affected by discipline. We're hitting a million mobs a million times during maps, so this is an insane boost to our overall survivability. The next important change is that we're swapping out Mystic Refractor Wand for a Dark Seer Scepter. This item will boost our overall ES, it will give us +2 levels to our Forbidden Rite and all of our golems, and it will also apply a malediction to enemies, which will make them do less damage while also taking increased damage. Because we're no longer using a Mystic Refractor wand, we have to swap out Deadly Ailments for greater multiple projectiles. At this point, we don't really need a Safeguarding Golem anymore, so we're definitely swapping it out with a Maelstrom Golem as well for more damage, thanks to Wither stacks. We're also going to be using only 3 Primordial Eminences now, with one of them having Corrupted Blood immunity. Since we still need them for the extra Golem slot, we'll be using 2 Megalomaniacs with Primordial Bond passives. If you can get a second useful passive, great, but focus on getting Primordial Bonds. In this version, we'll also be using a Replica Reckless Defense Jewel for some extra block. Another important change is that we'll no longer be using a Time Clasp ring. Instead of that, we're swapping it out for a Dusk ring on our left slot. Make sure when you're buying one of these that it's not mirrored and that it only has the split tag, because we're more than likely going to have to spam some Essence of Delirium on it to get dot multi with whatever other useful mods RNG would bless us with. We're also only going to be using 2 medium jewels with Eternal Suffering and Septic spells, so that we can apply 5 Wither stacks instantly, and also to help cap out our chance to poison. These two septic spells, when combined with Herald of Agony and an Eldritch Implicit on the gloves, and maybe a few tattoos, will allow us to get to 100% chance to poison on hit. And the last big change that we have in here are the large cluster jewels. We want to get ones with Primordial Bond and Renewal, where they are pushed closer to the starting point of the jewel, so we don't have to spend extra points getting them. In order to do that, we need to get a third passive on the cluster jewel, either Raise and Pillage or Rotten Claws. We're not going to be allocating them though. We just need them there so we spend less points taking the other two passives. The rest of the tree, gear, and gems are pretty much the same as the cheap budget version. For the Pantheon, we're going again with the Brine King for stun and freeze immunity, and Aberrath for burning ground immunity. And for the bandits, we're still going with Aramir. And now it's time for the endgame Mage Blood version of the build. In this variant, we'll be changing a lot of things, so buckle up. Since Mage Blood is so stupidly strong, we can tailor our build to be more centered around its effects of having 4 magic utility flasks up permanently. We'll be using triple elemental resistance flask with reduced effective curses in order to get curse immunity, chance to avoid stuns to get stun immunity, and chance to avoid shock, because we'll be comboing it with Storm Shroud for all elemental ailment immunity. That includes delirium ailments. For the 4th flask, we'll be using a silver one for onslaught with regenerate 3% of life per second during effect mod. And for the last flask, I'm still using an Oriet's End Bismuth flask for monster kabooms, but I do plan on changing it with a Wine of the Prophet. We're also swapping out the Dark Seer Scepter with a Profane Wand with Chaos.multi, +1 level of all Chaos spell skills, and then multi-mod bench crafting, increased Chaos damage, and increased cast speed. Ideally, we'd also want a +1 level of all spell skills in there as well, instead of the flat cold with the spells, but those can get pretty expensive. We're going to be dropping all the armor stacking shit now, and instead we'll be going pure ES for more damage with even more golems. So we have to drop the Divine Shield Keystone as well as the Aegis Aurora Shield, and instead take a rare shield with a lot of ES and 5% of ES recovery on block and 50% increased chance to block benchcraft. We'll now also be using the Dark Monarch with the mod maximum number of summoned golems is doubled. This will allow us to get 2 of each golem and 4 horde golems, for a total of 14 golems. And although their buffs don't stack, it will ensure that even if a certain golem dies, there will be another one to hold its place until the previous one respawns. So we'll almost always maintain their buffs up. Also, we'll have 5 Primordial Bond passives, which means we'll be getting 10% increased damage per summoned golem per Primordial Bond, for a total of 700% increased damage. For the body armor, boots, and gloves, we'll be focusing on fixing whatever resists and attributes we still might need while getting as much energy shield as possible. And for the rest of the gear, it is pretty much the same as the medium budget version. We'll also be swapping out the small cluster jewel for one with rote reinforcement in order to help cap out our attack block, and because we have a few extra points to spare since we don't need a second armor and ES mastery, we can invest those into some extra spell block in order to cap that as well. If you have excess amount of attributes, you can use Rune Graft of the Fortress on the Golem mastery for more ES, and you can also use some ES tattoos on a little bit of int. The rest of the tree and gems are pretty much the same as the previous versions. The only difference is that we're taking Determination out and we're putting in Zealotry for more spell damage and Consecrated Ground. For the Pantheon, we'll be going with Lunaris this time, since we're getting stun and elemental ailment immunity from our flasks. We're still taking Aberrath for burning ground immunity though, and we're still sticking with Aramir for the extra passive point from the bandits. Lastly, I'll go over the mercenary because he does have an important part in all of this. He won't really be doing any damage, but he will be providing us with a ton of damage and survivability from his gear and auras. And the most important thing for him is to be immortal. You should use a similar merc setup for all 3 versions of the build, but obviously feel free to experiment with other mercenaries as well. With that out of the way, what are we looking for in a merc? Well, the most important thing is that we need him to provide Grace Aura to give our golems a decent chunk of tankiness, and we'll also want whichever other secondary aura would be beneficial for us. I've opted into using a sniper with haste, but a toxicologist with malevolence or tartan agility is also pretty damn good. For the gear, I've given him the untouched soul amulet. Gems might not work for mercenaries, but that doesn't mean they can't have colored sockets. So we can basically get as many white sockets as we want to cap out his elemental resists, and then get red sockets on all the other pieces of gear to give him flat max life increase. On the helmet, he has a Leer cast to provide me with 50% increased damage. Doppelganger Guy's body armor will basically make him immortal because he'll only get the sane part of the item, so he'll be taking less physical and chaos damage while regenerating 10% of life over 1 second when he gets hit. We'll be giving him a Calm's binding belt to convert nearby enemy physical damage to fire damage, which will benefit not just us, but our golems as well. We're using a Widow Hilt with rear guard quiver to cap out his attack block and give him 51% spell block. We're using Anathema's ring with increased effect of grace corruption implicit on one ring and a large amount of chaos resist with despair on hit on the other ring. And for the gloves and boots, we'll be getting as much evasion as possible while fixing whatever resists still need fixing. By the way, there is a bug right now with Widow Hail and rear guard, which I should mention. When you log in on your character, Widow Hail's quiver buff isn't going to be active on the mercenary, and to fix that, you'll have to unequip and re-equip either the rear guard or the Widow Hail. Otherwise, the mercenary won't have any of the extra block. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this video. This has been by far one of the strongest and tankiest builds I've played so far in 3.26. And needless to say, it can easily clear all content in the game. I had a ton of fun blasting through the entire game with it, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. If you have any questions or recommendations, drop them down in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you liked the video and you wish to see my future Path of Exile content, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Stay sane, Exiles.
That baby in the club looking for single lady. Let's go shopping, blow some cash, hop in my bubble gum Mercedes. She got curvature on curve.